If you were able to join us Sunday, you may have noticed that as we went through Ephesians chapter 4, that we skipped a section. It was chapter 4, verses 18 through 20. And I did that in an effort to be timely, but I didn't want to leave it out completely because what I think Paul says in those verses is so critical to what the argument is he's making in that section. So I thought this would be a great excuse to get back into our Going Deeper series. So for those of you who may not remember, this space is here for us to take what we took and read and heard on Sunday morning and to take another look at it in a different light and address it in a deeper or more, perhaps even more meaningful way in some respects. So let's do that right now. If you have a Bible, open it up to Ephesians chapter 4. We're going to be going through verses 18 through 20 together and finding out what Paul is talking about here. Now, let me catch you up a bit. If you remember in chapter 4, verse 17, we discussed that Paul told the Gentile or non-Jewish believers in the city of Ephesus to stop acting like Gentiles, right? And he goes on to detail that in these verses, exactly what he's talking about. So let's read it together. Ephesians 4, I'll start in verse 17, we'll go to verse 20. He says, "Now I say this and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to their hardness of heart. They become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy to practice every kind of impurity. But that is not the way you learn Christ." Paul here paints this rather bleak portrait of humanity, doesn't he? But I want to clarify what he's talking about here. He's not saying in this section, if you're not a believer, if you're not a Christian, then you're stupid or you're ignorant. This is a statement of moral formation, not mental ability. So what Paul is doing here is he's painting a picture of humanity that has lost sensitivity to all evil, a way of life that has been in a pattern of self-serving behavior for so long that everything is permissible. Now, how does somebody get to that point? How do they get to the place where they no longer care about the things that are destroying their lives, their bodies, and hurting those around them? How do they get to the point where they're okay with it? Paul explains it in verse 19, doesn't he? He says they build up calluses. For those of you who may have done anything with enough repetition, you get the understanding. If you swing a hammer long enough, your hand starts to harden a little bit, but at first, the friction from the movement over and over and over again really hurts, really rubs you raw. But over time, the more you do it, the harder and harder your skin gets until you don't even feel it anymore. You see, we do that in our lives as well. We build up moral calluses because we're really all living out the story we read back in Genesis 3. You may remember that. The one where Adam and Eve choose their own definition of right and wrong as opposed to listening to the Creator God who formed and fashioned everything for them, set everything up, told them what to do and what not to do. And they said, no, we have the plan. We know what we want to do. We're going to reject your way and choose our way instead. Now that separation, that rejection caused pain in their lives in the moment, but over time, humanity becomes hardened to those choices. Initially, it hurts to reject God and His plan for our lives, but over time, it's like, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's just another callus I built up on my life to do it the way I want to do it, not the way He's called us to do it. We face that choice every day. You see, we choose to live our best life on our terms, and it leads to ruin, and it always will. You see, my definition of right conveniently excuses my own flaws and failures while highlighting the hypocrisy in everyone else. We live with little moral compromises that gives us the advantage, and we begin to build up these moral calluses to the reality of right that God has set. Paul sets to shock our system, to take us bare so to speak. So to make us raw, so to speak, in verse 20, he says, but that is not the way you learn Christ. You see, you can have a mindset that everything's fine. Maybe you build up some pretty impressive calluses, and then the gospel comes along and smashes you into a billion pieces. The truth of Jesus invades our space and exposes us. It says that all the things we thought were right are way wrong. It breaks us down. The beauty is that it remakes us after that by declaring that despite our rejection of God, despite those moral calluses that we build up, that God loves us and sent Jesus to die in our place so that we can have true life. Jesus died for the self-important, morally calloused hypocrite. He died for me and you. Like we talked about Sunday, the good news redefines us. It means no one is too hardened, no one's story is set in stone, but everyone is given the opportunity to adopt a new story, a story of death and new life, filled with grace and love, and that never ends.